What if I told you, being mentally strong doesn't mean you never feel pain? It doesn't mean you always have everything figured out, or that you wake up every day full of confidence and energy. Sometimes it means the exact opposite. Sometimes it means you feel everything, deeply, and still choose to move forward. Let me ask you something. Have you ever smiled in front of people while fighting a storm inside your mind? Have you ever told yourself I'm okay when you really weren't? If yes, then listen closely. Because what you see as weakness might actually be your greatest strength. And today, you might finally realize it. First sign, you keep going, even when you don't feel like it. Not because you're excited about life, not because everything is working out, but because deep down, you've decided you won't give up on yourself. There are days when your mind is tired, days when even small tasks feel heavy, days when getting out of bed feels like a battle, and still, you show up. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not at your best, but you show up, and that matters more than anything. Because real strength isn't loud. It's not about big achievements every day. It's about quiet consistency. It's about taking one more step when everything inside you says stop. Let me ask you, how many times have you pushed yourself forward without anyone noticing? That's strength. Second sign, you feel emotions deeply, but you don't let them control your actions. You're not numb. You're not disconnected. You feel sadness. You feel anger. You feel disappointment. Sometimes you feel everything all at once, and it's overwhelming. But here's the difference. You don't let those emotions decide who you become. You pause. You breathe. You think before you act. You don't react instantly, even when you want to. And that pause, that small moment of control, that's where your power lives. Because anyone can react, but not everyone can respond with awareness. Think about it. How many times did you want to say something, but chose silence instead? How many times did you feel like giving up, but chose patience? That's not weakness. That's discipline. That's strength. Third sign, you're comfortable being alone. Not lonely, but alone. There's a difference. You don't always need noise to feel okay. You don't need people around you every second to feel complete. You can sit in silence. You can think. You can reflect. And sometimes you even enjoy it. In a world where people are constantly trying to escape their own thoughts, you've learned to face yours. You've learned to understand yourself. And that's rare. Because being alone forces you to meet yourself honestly. No distractions, no filters. Just you. And if you've reached a point where that doesn't scare you anymore, you're stronger than you think. Fourth, you take responsibility for your life. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it would be easier to blame someone else. You don't always say, it's their fault. You ask yourself, what can I do better? And that question changes everything. Because blaming others gives you temporary relief. But taking responsibility gives you long-term power. It puts you back in control. It reminds you that even if you can't control everything, you can control your actions, your choices, your direction. Let me ask you honestly, when something goes wrong, do you look for excuses or do you look for solutions? Because that answer reveals your strength. Fifth sign, you've been through tough times and you didn't let them break you. Think back for a moment. There were nights when you felt lost, moments when everything felt uncertain, times when you questioned everything, even yourself. Maybe you felt alone. Maybe you felt misunderstood. Maybe you felt like no one truly knew what you were going through. And yet, you made it through. You didn't quit. You didn't disappear. You stayed. Even when it hurt. Even when it felt unfair. You kept going. And that matters. Because survival is not something to underestimate. Sometimes, just making it through the day is an achievement. And if you've done that again and again, then you're already stronger than most people. But let me ask you something. Do you recognize your strength? Or do you ignore it because it doesn't look impressive enough? Sixth, you don't need constant approval. You appreciate support. You value encouragement. But you don't depend on it. You don't stop just because no one is cheering for you. You don't change who you are just to fit into someone else's expectations. You're learning to trust yourself, your decisions, your path, even when others don't understand it. And that's not easy, because humans naturally want validation. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel seen. But you've learned that your worth is not decided by other people's opinions. And that realization is powerful, because once you stop seeking approval, you start living freely. 7th sign, you're open to growth, even when it's uncomfortable. You don't pretend to be perfect. You know you have flaws. You know there are things you need to improve. And instead of avoiding it, you face it. You learn from your mistakes. You listen when someone gives you honest feedback, even when it hurts your ego, even when it's difficult to accept. You choose growth over comfort. And that choice separates you from most people, because growth is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires humility. It requires effort. And not everyone is willing to do that. But you are, which means you're evolving, slowly but surely. 8th sign, you keep hope alive, even in dark moments. Not a loud, obvious hope. Not a fake everything is perfect kind of hope, but a quiet belief that things can get better, that this pain has meaning, that this phase is not permanent. Even when you feel tired, even when you feel lost, even when nothing makes sense, you still hold on, even if it's just a little, and that little is everything. Because hope is not about having answers, it's about believing that answers will come. And if you've managed to hold on to that belief, even in your hardest moments, then you're stronger than you realize. But let me take this a little deeper. Mental strength is not something you're born with. It's something you build through pain, through failure, through moments when you had no choice but to grow. Every time life challenged you, you had two options: break or adapt. And every time you chose to adapt, you became stronger, even if you didn't notice it at the time, even if it didn't feel like growth. Because growth is uncomfortable, it's messy, it's slow. It doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like confusion, like doubt, like taking 2 steps back. But in reality, you're still moving forward. Let me ask you one more thing. When was the last time you acknowledged your own progress? Not your goals, not your future, but how far you've already come. Because chances are, you've grown more than you give yourself credit for. You've become more patient, more aware, more resilient. You handle things today that once felt impossible, and that's not luck. That's strength, real strength. The kind that doesn't need attention, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that quietly shapes who you are becoming. So if you ever feel like you're not enough, if you ever feel like you're falling behind, if you ever question your own strength, remember this: you've survived days you thought you wouldn't. You've faced emotions that felt unbearable. You've kept going when stopping would have been easier. And you're still here, still trying, still learning, still growing. And honestly, that says more about you than anything else ever could. So maybe you're not weak. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just in the process of becoming someone stronger than you ever imagined. And that process isn't always easy, but it's worth it. So don't give up now, not when you've come this far, not when you've already proven, again and again, that you can handle more than you think. Keep going, even if it's slow, even if it's messy, even if no one sees it, because one day you'll look back at this version of yourself and realize this is where your strength was built. Thanks for watching and subscribing, channel.